The grace of the Lord Jesus Christ be with you. Welcome everyone to the Maundy Thursday service, our love feast for Holy Week. Holy Week is a progression of events that turns the concept of love on its head. Brokenness is shown to be a part and parcel of what it is to love, and to love deeply. And we know from Jesus' breaking of the bread at the Last Supper that this was true for him and for his disciples as well. The culminating irony of our love story with the Holy is that we are not the ones doing the searching. We are not the ones looking for love because love comes to look for us, especially in our brokenness and our sorrow, as we see from what Jesus said to his loved ones on the cross. Love with a capital L is here, already and always. This is the source of our availability to love one another. So this ritual is a celebration of love. It is a celebration of the beauty of being together. It is a breaking and a sharing of food and of our lives. Our first step is to set a place for love. Let us hear part of the story of Holy Week where the disciples prepared the way for this poignant Last Supper from the Gospels of John and Matthew. Just before the Passover feast, Jesus knew that the time had come to leave this world and to go to the Father. Having loved his dear companions, he continued to love them right until the end. On the first day of the festival of unleavened bread, the disciples came to Jesus and said, "Where do you want us to prepare for you to eat the Passover meal?" And he replied, "Go into the city to a certain man and say, 'The teacher says my time is near. I'm going to celebrate the Passover with my disciples at your house.'" The disciples did just as Jesus instructed him. They prepared for the Passover. Once the disciples were in the upper room, Jesus did the first of many surprising things that would occur that night in order to show his beloveds how to continue in the way of love. And let us hear more from the Gospel of John. Jesus and his disciples were sharing the evening meal. The devil had already provoked Judas, Simon Iscariot's son, to betray Jesus. Jesus knew the Creator had given everything into his hands and that he had come from God and was returning to God. So he got up from the table and he took off of his robe. Picking up a linen towel, he tied it around his waist. And then he poured water into a wash basin and began to wash the disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that he was wearing. When Jesus came to Simon Peter, Peter said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" And Jesus replied, "You don't understand what I am doing now, but you will understand later." "No," said Peter, "you will never wash my feet." And Jesus replied, "Unless I wash you, you won't have a place with me." And so Simon Peter said, "Lord, not only my feet, but also my hands and my head." And Jesus responded, "Those who have bathed only need to have their feet washed, because they are He knew who would betray him, and that's why he said, "Not every one of you is clean." After he washed the disciples' feet, he put on his robe, and he returned to his place at the table. And he said to them, "Do you know what I have done for you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you speak correctly because I am. If I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, so too must you wash each other's feet. I have given you an example. Just as I have done, you must do also. I assure you, servants are not greater than their master, nor are those who are sent greater than the one who sent them. Since you know these things, you will be happy if you do them. And I invite you to join in the hymn, Love Us into Fullness. We've been singing this throughout our Lenten journey, and the insert is in the bulletin. Like a good Jewish rabbi, Jesus prayed a blessing over the bread at the beginning of the meal, breaking it open and saying the appropriate and customary words. But then he added unfamiliar words that no doubt took the disciples aback, underscoring the gravity of this meal. He said that this bread was his body, broken open in love for all. In this action, we remember that love sometimes breaks us open, inviting us to share our vulnerability, our fears, and our hope. And when we do, life is more sweet, more meaningful, filled with more of what truly matters. Let us come to the table in thanksgiving of Christ's offering for us, and let us lift our hands and simply say together, grateful, grateful. Let's continue the Holy Week story from the Gospel according to John. Little children, I am with you for a little while longer. You will look for me, but just as I told the Jewish leaders, I also tell you now, where I am going, you cannot come. I give you a new commandment. Love each other, just as I have loved you. So you must also love each other. This is how everyone will know that you are my disciples, when you love each other. Jesus gathered with his friends who were his family, his traveling companions, and his loved ones. And he knew that what was said that night would be remembered long after the gathering, just as all last words are remembered in a searing way. Anyone who's had a difficult diagnosis or is embarking on a dangerous journey knows that there is a heightened sense of attention to what might be the final exchanges with a loved one. There is a sense that we must acknowledge and somehow express what matters most. Our Lenten series has all been about focusing our attention on these things, on clearing away the obstacles to deep and lasting love of others, of life, and love for ourselves. We remember that at the end of the meal, Jesus lifted the cup for the customary Jewish blessing. And once again, he added unfamiliar words that would be remembered even now. From the Gospel of John, "Drink from this, all of you. This is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many, so that their sins might be forgiven. I tell you, I won't drink wine again until that day when I drink it anew with you in love's kingdom." A bowl of water has been set out, and as you come forward for communion, I invite you to dip your hand into the bowl of water and remember the washing and your baptism and the water of life. And then, as there are just a few of us, if we can all come and gather around the table, we have bread and juice cups. Gather that and hold it, and let's all partake together. And so, like Jesus on that night, we lift a glass and we can offer a toast of love from the heart as we join in remembering this specific Passover meal. The bread has been prepared. The cup has been poured. Let us come. Let us receive what Christ has prepared. Disciples gathered around that table that evening and shared a meal with each other. Let us share Christ's meal together tonight. The bread of life, the cup of love. Return to your seats. When Jesus and his disciples had finished dinner, Jesus took them to the Garden of Gethsemane so that he could pray there. It was late. The disciples were sleepy. While they dozed, Jesus had a conversation with God that sounded very human, very vulnerable. In fact, it sounded as if he was looking for love just as we find ourselves when life is hard. From the Gospel of John, my Abba, Father, if it's possible, take this cup of suffering away from me. If it is not possible that this cup be taken away unless I drink it, then let that be what you want. What happened next was a flurry of soldiers, arrests, interrogations, and disciples in distress. As they struggle to know what to do while feeling exposed and threatened and unsafe. And they did all the things that we know we sometimes do when fear gets a hold of us. And then the crowds, those themselves who were under political oppression in a pressure cooker of the high holy days in Jerusalem, began to get caught up in the frenzy of political power, and Jesus' fate was sealed. Crucifixion. Rome's most hideous way to execute prisoners of the state was the sentence. They took him to Golgotha, which means the skull place, and hung him on a cross next to two criminals. There was mocking and ridicule by the authorities who believed a true king would never have been left to die. But in the midst of all of this, Jesus' last acts and words were simply about love. He assured the repentant criminal that he was forgiven by God. He looked upon his mother and he made sure one of his disciples was going to take care of her as if she were his own mother. And he forgave his executioners. Luke's gospel reads, "Forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." And in these moments, he showed us how to love. This is the true kingdom of love. He laid down his life because his message of love and justice for the oppressed and for the unlovable and for the outcasts and for the sinners was a threat to the powers that be, those that use fear to rule instead of love. What will we choose? Fear or love? Hatred or love? Fame and fortune or love? The song that Bill is going to play is called "I Choose Love." It is a song by Mark Miller. And it's okay to listen. I have a feeling Jeff may have our words on the screen if you'd like to sing along. Please join me in the confession that is printed in your bulletin. Holy and merciful one, in this season of discernment, we have come bringing our deepest longings and our failed attempts at satisfying them. We have often looked for love, for acceptance and security in the trappings of things that don't, in the end, really satisfy our longing for love. We yearn for lives that matter. We desire relationships that thrive. And we want less regret. At times we fail to see that you have already given us what really matters, your love and acceptance. In this moment of remembering your love poured out for us through your life, your ministry, your death, help us, O God, to choose love every time, no matter the cost. We know now that the cost of looking for love elsewhere is a price too high in this precious life. Be with all of us now as we move into the night, as we wait for what we have the luxury of knowing, that love wins in the end. But for now, let us leave committing to whatever change is necessary to bring more love into our lives and into our world. Amen.